My current work is using wolverine tissue samples to look at wolverine DNA. And this is in order to look at the relatedness between individual wolverines across the landscape. And then we compare patterns of genetic relatedness with different landscape features and different environmental conditions. And this helps us understand what is influencing individual wolverine movement and breeding across the landscape. I started working with individual trappers and hunters in Alaska that were actually harvesting wolverines, because wolverines are harvested for their fur. And so we expanded the sample set by working with individual trappers and hunters. Immediately immersed in this very different culture of hunting and trapping and gathering, kind of living off the land to some extent. People have a much deeper connection with the landscape that they live on when they're out there actively harvesting from it and relying on it. Across Alaska, there's a lot of different motivations for trapping wolverines, and generally they're a prized species for their pelt. They have a very beautiful pelt, and they're used in a lot of traditional indigenous clothing, and non-indigenous people really appreciate the fur for the hoods that you can make out of them. They're frost resistant, so in really cold temperatures, they actually keep frost from forming on the fur, so you don't get ice clumps near your face. So they have a very practical use, but then there's also the cultural history of the use of the fur, and then there's also either a respect or a level of just being impressed by the species for their tenacity and their stubbornness, and to some extent. They are a very, very tough creature. They live in these super cold environments. They're built like a pit bull. Their muscle is it's incredible. They're all muscle. And so there is a level of respect or appreciation for just this very strong and tenacious animal. The main benefits of working with the trapping community is that they are very invested in the species. They directly benefit from the species having healthy populations on the landscape, and they are naturally very curious about the species. They're out there directly observing them, observing the landscape that they live on, and so they have this amazing knowledge base that they can share with me. And so I'm super lucky to have these individual trappers that want to communicate their observations to me. And if I ask them, have you seen anything interesting in the areas that you're trapping? Did you notice anything interesting about this, specific individual that you're giving me a sample from? They'll be happy to communicate it to me. And so, since I am not out there doing the field work myself, and I'm getting all these samples from the trappers, having those observations and having that knowledge communicated to them, or from them to me, is just it's invaluable for the research. And it's helped me form a lot of my research hypotheses and questions, and just given me a much broader understanding of the species in Alaska.